Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, President and Founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. So without any further ado, let's get started. Today is Tuesday, and it is a beautiful day outside. The sun is shining, and everything's going our way. Life is good, and today I had a very cool topic I want to talk to you about. So I was recently engaged by a group of people who were asking questions. And one of the questions they asked me is they said, just before all the pandemic related things happened, that their office was going through a complete remodel. And that the goal of the remodel was to make the office space more collaborative and more agile, so that people work together and they had all this open space. And one of the things they complained about was that they felt like it was taking away from not only the ambiance of the office, but it was taken away from people having a private place to collaborate or a private place for separation. So there was a lot of open space, but there was no, cozy area, if you will, to have conversations. And I'm not talking about those rigid areas where you have the glass sliding door where two people could fit in a room barely with two chairs and a phone. I've seen some of those really sterile areas, and that's not what I'm talking about either. But they said that I guess the trend that they saw was that the open atmosphere was almost too open, and that the closed atmosphere was becoming Cubeville. People felt like they were walking into the movie Office Space. Yeah, not good, right? So the question that I was challenged with is, and I'll quote the person who asked it, how do we create a kick-ass environment in a remote setting where everyone's working remotely? And, this is a challenge because if you have people from all over the world and you have people with different cultural backgrounds, you're going to have to do some extra push-ups, if you will. You're going to have to do some extra leg lifts to get people engaged, to keep people involved, and to help people understand that you really do care about their well-being and what they're trying to do. So I put together a list of the top 3. So these are the top 3 things that you can do to allow or to help your teams become more engaged, to allow them to feel like they have a better work environment, and to give them an opportunity to grow. So the first on the list of 3 is to show interest in what they're doing. So there's a story I tell in some of my classes about one developer who everybody considered to be the jerk. I mean, this guy was just, nobody wanted to talk to him. He was always very standoffish. He never told you what was going on. He'd roll his eyes in meetings and be like, whatever. He wasn't exactly the best communicator. He didn't have good bedside manner. And he was just really distant from everyone else. The thing was, though, he was very, very good at what he did. He was really good. I mean, the organization didn't want to let him go by any means, just because he was exceptional at what he did. So the question became, how do I get that person better engaged? Or is it even worth it to try to get this person better engaged, right? So we tried all different things. We tried finding things he might be interested in. We tried talking to him. And nothing seemed to work. So finally, one day I just broke down and I walked over to him and I said, hey, I called him up by name. I said, do you have a minute? He's like, not really. I'm like, well, great. I said, listen, because that means he had a minute. So I said, listen, I need your help. I said, I'm kind of in a bind and you're the only person that I know that can help me. And he's like, oh. So the first thing I did was I established that I had faith in him, right? But then I proceeded to tell him this, that I felt like I was doing him and the rest of his group a disservice because I didn't really know enough about what he was doing and the things that he was working on that I could properly represent him to management. That I knew he'd been swamped and overworked, but there was nothing I could say because I didn't know any of the details. So it made it real hard for me to convey exactly what was happening. And I asked him if he wouldn't mind sharing 10 minutes with me, just going over what he does and what he's doing and what he's working on. It didn't have to be anything long-winded. I just wanted to take a few notes. That way I could better represent him to leadership. And he stopped for a minute and he turned around and he looked at me. He goes, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, I'm serious. He goes, really? I said, yeah. I said, if you don't have time, I understand, because I was fully expecting to get shot down. He stopped. He stood up from his chair. He walked over to another area, got a chair and pulled a chair in and sat it next to him. And he looked at me and he says, sit. I said, oh, right now? He grabbed my arm and pulled me down into a chair and said, sit. And at that moment, he turned from his computer screen and he looked at me and went, and he just started telling me all the things he was working on and what was going on and why he was so frustrated and what was happening in his life and what was happening at home. And I mean, he showed me every single piece of what he was working on. 20 minutes later, I felt like, okay, I felt like an MMA person. I was ready to tap out. I'm like, and thanks for that. I really appreciate it. And I stood up and he grabbed my arm and he goes, oh, no, sit. And he pulled me back down and continued. Literally an hour and 20 minutes later, this guy was still talking about what was going on, and I think, the analogy I like to use here is if you've ever cooked with an Instant Pot before, if you've ever cooked with an Instant Pot, when the food's ready, all that pressure is trapped inside and you have to flip the valve at the top. When you flip the valve, it's like, and everything comes flying out of the top. This guy was right there. He was ready to explode. He had all this pressure built up inside because no one ever took time to do number one, show interest in what he was working on. If you just show interest in what he's doing, who he is, what he's working on, show her what you know and what you don't know, and ask meaningful questions. And don't do it just for the sake of doing it. Go in and expect to be engaged. Take notes. Let them know that you really do care about what they're working on. And that usually works really, really well, because when people know that you have a vested interest in what they're doing, then they're going to have a vested interest in their work. And it's just going to reciprocate, right? So it's going to come right back to you. The second one is to find ways to allow innovation, be creative. For some organizations, they forget all about innovation. They forget all about allowing people to do the fun stuff, the sexy stuff. And I'm not just talking about software, it could be anything you're working on. You have to allow time for people to not only use their regular muscles, but to flex their creative muscles. And I think that sometimes we don't allow for that to happen. And I think that if we find ways to allow for innovation, we find ways to allow people to flex their creative muscles, what's going to happen is you're going to see, once again, growth within a team, a more open mindset, and you're going to see teams that thrive because they'll have the latest innovation on products and services, but they'll also be able to know that someone is interested in their well-being because their will to live isn't just slowly being sucked out of them every day working on a drudgery, right? And then the third one is find creative ways to reward success. Um, you know, it sounds hysterical, but in the past, I've done everything from, you know, uh, buying the latest video game for a team, if that's what they're into, to allowing them to go work on a Habitat for Humanity house when we could do those kind of things. I found ways to creatively reward success. Buy a bag of groceries and send it to each one's house with treats. They had treats that they could use when, or have while they were in a meeting or something that was coming up. I've just found some really creative ways to keep people engaged, to let people know, hey, even though I'm not there physically, I'm still there, and to help them understand that a coach is there through thick and thin, and a coach isn't there just when you need them. A coach is there when you don't need them. And that's why they're a good coach, because a good coach is going to be the person that you shouldn't need unless you really need them, right? That means they're doing their job. If the coach is always there because you need them, that's an indicator to me that they're not doing their job and that they're there for the paycheck and that you're paying them. I try to be that coach that pivots on rewarding success and finding ways to do it. And I've done all kinds of funny, creative things before, with regard to showing interest and allowing innovation. I've done everything from Hawaiian shirt day. I know, how creative, huh? To funny hat day, to culture days to teach about culture, to a cooking class once a week where someone had to, especially in the pandemic, where someone had to go into their kitchen and teach everyone how to cook something and share a recipe. It's just something to get you enough outside the box that there's lots of fun things you can do. We've even had photography classes where people did that as a hobby and came in. We even had one guy who did automotive repair, who came in and just talked about basic things you could do to troubleshoot if there was a problem with your car. I mean, I'm not promoting or advocating that every team has bandwidth to do something like this, but what I am saying is the teams that do this are the teams that find more success because they're investing in their people. They're investing in helping them grow. They're investing in helping their teams collaborate more, and they're investing in the core, be a better person mentality, because one person really can make a difference if they're empowered with the right tools. So I hope you found this episode of the Daily Stand-Up useful, and I hope you can learn more about this and any other topic. You can visit agiledad.com, where we have more information about this, and I'm sure any other topic you're looking for. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe to the Daily Stand-Up Podcast. We'd like that. Also, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and if you have a topic you want to discuss, feel free to email us at learnmore@agiledad.com, where we'd love to cover your topic. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.